I'm not going to do a rules teach. I'll talk just a little bit about the origin of Europe Divided, and then we'll get into it. And then, I think Fred and Don will probably talk to some of the reasoning about some of the things they're doing, and I might give some explanations as we go. But we won't do a full rules teach. So, sort of the origin of Europe Divided is, it is a game about the post-Cold War, not the Cold War. So not a topic that's been explored a lot. I've always had an interest in this sort of region, especially sort of Eastern Europe, Central Europe, and the Transcaucasus. So the opportunity to do a game on this subject was something I was really interested in. And one of the things that I wanted the game to evoke strongly was the sort of bureaucratic tension between NATO and EU and their slow to responsiveness juxtaposed against Russia's quick to response but relatively resource limited, right? And so through the course of the game, the idea is that you would be able to see this post-Cold War weakened Russia become resurgent, as we saw in the invasion of Georgia in 2008, and then in Ukraine in 2014, and currently there's threats of that again. So hopefully the game evokes that. And I guess without further ado, we'll launch into it and we'll see what happens.
Okay, Fred, I have my first two cards ready to go. If you have your first two ready to go.
Oh, you're putting pressure on me. I was just casually listening to James saying good stuff about me, and I couldn't concentrate. I was like, yes, that feels good, and then I completely forgot I was here to play. So you got me at a disadvantage here. Merde.
So while
okay,
Fred's deciding on his cards, so each of the players has 4 cards in their hand. They're choosing 2 of those cards to play for initiative. Whichever player has the higher initiative will play their 2 cards first.
As Fred also thinks, we also have a couple of advantage cards specific to our side, which we chose from 3. We have 2 that we can use throughout the first half of the game, or not. If we don't use them, we'll score points for them.
Yeah,
sorry,
at the mid game.
I all over you.
Okay, I have. So we're both gonna announce the number of the sum of the value of our cards to see who has initiative. I have a 9.
I have an 8, which means you're gonna go first, Fred.
Yep.
And just for the audience,
And
if
now,
we had tied, Europe would win that tie, and Europe would go first.
Yep. Go ahead, David.
No, I was just saying, the more powerful a card is, the higher its initiative. But usually in this game, you want to go second. So there's a constant tension between wanting to play powerful cards, but also wanting to be the second player that goes so you can respond.
So the first card I'm playing here is the energy sector, and I'm playing it because, as you can see, Europe has quite a lot of money, whereas Russia is pretty poor, and the energy sector is actually granting me 3 resources. So I'm going to play this for the resources, get the 3 coins, and then the follow-up thing that I'm going to do is, now I'm actually wondering, should I straight up start building influence in Europe, or should I build an army, which might come in handy later on. But I think I'm going to spend 2 straight away to start building influence in Europe. And where I'm going to buy influence is in Czechoslovakia, because I know that Don is probably interested in that region for some reason. So I'm just going to place my first influence here.
I see that Fred's not really a team player right off the bat.
And so what's driving?
I'm not known for being a team player.
So what's driving Fred's actions here? We've started the game with 2 what are called headline cards, and this is one of the 2 main ways in the game they're going to score victory points. Each side, there's 2 different headline cards in play. They don't have to be synced up to each player, even though this is Russia scoring victory points and this is Europe scoring victory points. They could both be Russian. It was just the luck of the deal. Though by the end, there'll be an equal number out for each of the sides. So in this case, we have the goal of Europe here is to have EU influence in Czechia and Slovakia at the end of round 4. That's when we'll check to see if that condition is true. They would have to have dominance. They'd have to have a 6 there. And so Fred has placed some Russian influence there to try to make sure that Russia has more influence than the EU.
And in famous last words, I'll say it's plenty of time for me to come clean up Czechia and Slovakia, so I'm going to leave that behind for now. So of my 2 cards that I played, the first one is I've played Greece, and I'm going to use the diplomatic power of Greece. I'm going to spend 2 coins, 2 money, $2 billion actually, or 2 billion euros to place in Poland. So I'm going to establish some influence in Poland. And then the second card that I have is Benelux, and I'm going to use that to increase that 1 influence die to a 4 right off the bat, which I believe gives me control of the Baltic Sea. Because there's a control card, it's controlled by the player with the highest total influence in the Baltics and Poland. And right now, EU has influence 4 in Poland and the Baltics, so I now have control of the Baltic Sea, and I'll signify that by taking one of the EU fleet tokens and putting it up here. And those are my 2 cards. I will draw 2 more, and then we do it again, having gone to the second round of 20.
I'm gonna put the Baltic Sea card just next to you, so you also have a reminder of the effect of it.
Thank you very much.
And so when we move the round marker here, you can see it once the round marker is shifted. Anything that was under the round marker is revealed, and we'll resolve that. So we'll talk about that at the end of round 2. What exactly happens there? So now, once again, they're each deciding on their 2 cards, 2 of 4 of the regular action cards. What you all probably saw there as they were taking their turn was that they each took a single action. Even though I'm going to zoom into to Don's card. Don't say anything, but you can see a string of actions along the card. So these are multi-use cards. They have a lot of different actions on them, unlocked by the strength of the country, the region. You're only going to take 1 action per card on your turn, so you'll end up taking 2 actions every turn.
All right, my initiative is 9.
Mine is 12, so I will go first, and I will start by paying 2 to place an influence in Belarus, and then I'm playing the president to bring that influence to 4.
Okay. So the first thing I will do is use my Spain and Portugal card. Again, this will cost me 2 money. And for 2 money, I'll establish 1 EU influence in Czechoslovakia. And then the second card is I will move a NATO army. And this NATO army, I can move 1 space for free. Any space that I move beyond that will cost me 1 coin per space. So I'm just going to move the army in Germany down here. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to eventually, to satisfy this headline card, get a 6 influence from the EU here, so I can score those 2 points eventually in a couple rounds. And so you can never have a level 6 influence and an army of the opposing team in the same spot. So if I put that here, that'll keep his 1 influence from going up to a 6 unless and until he moves an army in, or he bumps it up to a 6 to annihilate the army and bump that influence back down to a 5. So I'm trying to put a little stopper there and drive up the price on him a bit. And that's it for me. And now we're at the end of turn 2. Dave, do you want to talk about what happens at the end of the even turns?
Yeah, so we advance the marker. We're going to shift these 2 headline cards. So each of them shift to current, meaning they're the ones that are going to resolve next. And now each player is going to choose one of the 3 headlines cards. So at the beginning of the game, they were each dealt 3 headline cards. That meant they had a couple of turns to know what they had secretly. So they're each going to put 1 in play and then reveal it. And so now everybody will know that in 4 turns, these are going to be the cards that are resolving. So they still have a couple more turns before these resolve, and then they're going to each draw up a new headline card to keep their hand at 3. And they're right here, Fred. Okay.
Oh, I never did draw 2 cards from my previous turn. Let me.
Yeah, and as you can see, I need to draw 2 cards, but I cannot because the Russian deck is a bit smaller. So now that I need to draw a second card and can't, I will take back the discard, reshuffle to create a new deck, and take a card.
And one of the aspects of the game is that the Russian player goes through their deck much faster than the EU and NATO player. Right off the bat, because they start with 7 cards, as opposed to the EU and NATO's combined 13 cards. And of course, we will both be augmenting cards into our deck as we get a certain amount of influence in each of the contested regions, which are those gray regions in the middle of the board.
So while we wait on Fred to decide, I'm just going to go up and zoom in on the headlines that are in play. So what we see here is that to meet these requirements, this represents the 2008 Russia-Georgia conflict, where Russia, as I said, went into Georgia, and South Ossetia, and Abkhazia. And so we see to meet this goal, Russia would have to have 2 armies present in Georgia. To meet this goal, Russia would have to have an army in Armenia. Here, we talked about before, where the EU has to have dominance, a 6, in Czechia and Slovakia. And here, NATO has to have more influence than Russia, and it has to have an army in the Western Balkans. And this represents the Kosovo War.
This is painful.
You think it's bad from your side, Fred? I'm feeling a lot of pain over here. I'm not getting the cards I need, but that's always going to be the case.
Oh God, I'm so tight on money. That's awful. I hate this game. Awful.
You've got advantage cards.
That is one thing
Yeah,
I like
but
about the game, is that the difference in sort of resources and resource generation, right? Generally, the EU and NATO player has more money coming in, a better economy, at least initially, than the Russian player. And that has to be factored in because, Dave, you can correct me wrong, but from the games I've played, a lot of Russia's strategy is around manipulation of where their armies are within striking distance of certain influence regions that they want to sort of knock down EU influence in. And so it costs money to move those things. So one of the effective things that the EU NATO player can do is sort of make it very expensive to do things.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, I won't be doing that because that would require both talent and skill. But I'll try my best.
But don't worry, I'll make problems for myself quite easily. So
I appreciate you leveling the playing field, Fred.
Yeah, sure. You're very welcome.
So my initiative is 13. I went heavy this turn.
Yeah, that's what I thought you might do. So I have an initiative of 8, so you can go first.
All right. Now I've got to remember the order in which I was doing things. So I'm going to play my Italy card here. And with my Italy card, one of the things you can do is increase influence by 4 in a region. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my influence here in Czechia and Slovakia by 4 to make this 1 of 5. And the second card that I have is Germany. And I'm going to use Germany to also raise influence by 4. And that will raise my influence in Poland actually up to a 6. It was a 4, and now it goes up to a 6. And so what that does is once you get to a influence of a 5 or a 6, you get those particular contested region cards into your deck. So I'll get Czechia and Slovakia as a card and also Poland as a card. Now notice this space on the board, this blue diamond, which means the Poland card that I have will allow me to build a NATO army in Poland. I can't use it for that right now because I don't have any NATO influence in that region. When I get the card, you'll see it has both it has EU and Poland symbols on it, but I can only use the EU symbol because that's the only influence that I have right now of level 5 or 6. Did I do that right, Dave?
That's exactly right. Yeah, and that is one of the most important challenges for the Europe players, dealing with adding these contested region cards to your deck, but only having the influence in either NATO or the EU, right? Which just means that your deck gets less and less efficient the longer the game goes.
So what I did is I pulled out of these contested regions, which you can see are gray on the bottom. I pulled out Czechoslovakia and also Poland, and I will take those two and add them to my discard pile. Now, one thing you'll notice, if you don't mind me sort of helping out a little bit, on the left-hand side of the Czechoslovakia card, it also has a little symbol down here that says you can also use this card instead of for the symbols on the left-hand side for actually the text. Notice it says action up there. I would use the action of that card to do whatever that says. Some cards will have actions, some will have effects when you play that card, others will have reactions that the opposing player can do if you play that card, or they may have reactions if you play that card for an EU or a NATO action. So they're all very situational in that regard. And I believe that's my turn. I see Fred has already conceded. I can see why he's done this. He must be intimidated.
No, I was on. I was getting some liquid courage. Wait a minute, I'm back. Okay, so let's go.
You ready now?
I think. So I will use the news media to generate some income. So I will get 2 coins from there because I'm dangerously low on cash. And then what I'm going to do is use the Northwestern Federal District to bump Belarus, and also myself have a country that I have dominance in, and that would be Belarus. And as Don was explaining, I'm going to take that Belarus card that is here in the neutral ones, and I'm going to add it to my discard. And I just need to find it. That's maybe not the easiest process. And the reason why I'm taking the Belarus card is that Belarus is one of those neutral cards where I can build armies in, and that will give me a point where I can build armies in the middle of Europe, which is something that I might want to do. I'm not saying I will, but I might. And yeah, but that should trigger a reaction from the NATO player, I think. Oh, wait a minute, that's the wrong card. I thought I picked the right one. The search function in yes, is not super practical. Here it is. Good. And that's my turn.
Okay, and I think that is the end of the round, so we move. Now, one thing that's crucial here is that we are going to carry out these headlines at the end of this round. So positioning in this particular round, and from now on, each even number round is going to be critical because, as Dave was saying, going second gives you the ability to react to your opponent. So what I definitely want is I want to get a 6 in Czechoslovakia so I can score this, which means I probably want to go after Fred. Now he's got a real challenge because he's got to come over here and knock this army out before he can bump his die up and preclude me from maybe getting this to a 6. So I think he's got an uphill battle here, even if I went first. But good to go, Fred?
Yep.
So my initiative is 4.
Oh, merde. I really tried. My initiative is 6. Okay.
Well, you have the honor and privilege of going first, sir.
Yes. I had a plan, but this plan just collapsed. So that's perfect.
Excellent.
Great. Okay, so this is... Yeah, I cannot do anything about this. So maybe I can just prepare for the future. So I basically know that, Czechoslovakia is a no-go. I had a plan for it, but I cannot do it. So the other option is for me to prepare either my future events or prevent Don's future events. So I'm looking quickly what he has in the future headline, and I can see that he has the Western Balkan as an objective, and I have my own to do something about. So I think I'm going to use the military-industrial complex to move one army into Armenia. Yes, military influence into Armenia, and I'm going to move it, and I'm going to be a bit sneaky. I'm going to save money. I'm going to do a military exercise using that advantage card that will place an army in the Black Sea. And then it's that army that I'm going to move. And I'm going to move one area, so that's cost me 0, and 2, so that costs me 1. One resource. That's my first card play. And then the second card play, I think I'm just going to get some cash to prepare for the future round.
And people may be thinking, why could you do 3 actions there? That's because one of those actions was off of an advantage card that he has, one of the 2 that he has for the first half of the game. And so that was a special effect that he could do. And he's lost that. So what he's done is he's basically given up a victory point, because that card, if he didn't spend it by the halfway point of the game, he would have a victory point. But he's precluding that victory point by getting the advantage of the card. So it's an interesting sort of trade-off that takes place.
Yeah, and I made that decision because it might give me a VP anyway, because it secures me an objective, and it does put. So all in all, if it gets me the VP, I will have the same value as the card plus the army that I placed on the map.
Now, if I was smart, then what I could do is play an EU card that lets me bump this up to get my 2 points, and also play a NATO card that would let me move this army in Turkey over to Armenia to annihilate his army simultaneously and deny him that victory point. Luckily for Fred, I'm not that bright, so I didn't do that. What I did do is I've got Austria and Finland, and with the Austria card, I will use that to, sure enough, bump up my EU influence in Czechoslovakia up to 6. And then with the Finland card, what I will do is, the question here is, do I use that for money, or do I use that to establish influence somewhere? I think I'm going to use that for money. So I'm going to get 2 money out of that. Oh, I think I got 1 too many.
And I do want to walk through. So this game it's a very, obviously, like any other 2-player game, it's a very zero-sum game, right? And there's 2 general different ways to approach this game, I guess, like from a super strategic 30,000-foot view perspective. One is you concentrate on accomplishing your own things, and the other is stopping your opponent from accomplishing theirs. So Fred probably had enough money that he could have tried to go second solely because, like, Don probably wouldn't have boosted this to 6 and brought in another army, right? And so if Fred had gone second, he could have probably spent enough money to move 2 armies in here. One would have removed Don's NATO army, and the second would have knocked this down from 6 to 5. And he could have probably orchestrated it so he could stop Don if he had low enough initiative cards. But the cost would have been massive, right? There would be a huge investment. So that's what, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier about the tension between trying to go first or second with your stronger cards.
Okay. So now we're at the end of turn 4, which means we're going to carry out these current headlines, correct, Dave?
That's right. Yep. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll check for each of those to see if it's true, and so both of them resolved. And so both players get those headline cards.
Fred, with your permission, I'll give you a point, and with your permission, I'll take 2 points. And now it's all about stalling from the EU point of view and making sure that I spend the next hour and a half to think about my next turn.
Nurse that 1-point victory.
Hey, I prefer to think of it as if I doubled Fred's score.
That's right. So both those headlines will come off, but the headlines that were forthcoming will slide over to current, and each player will put a new headline in play in the forthcoming. And now I'm just looking at TTS. I can't see, but James, are you still around? And the only reason I was going to ask is, like, I didn't know if at some point we wanted to ask if anybody had any questions, if we're going to take questions as we're playing, or just kind of keep going. Yeah,
and maybe
sure.
to avoid chaos in the voice chat, maybe if you want to ask questions, you can probably type them in the test chat, and then David can bring them and answer them. That makes sense.
Absolutely, yes. And I won't be checking in the text chat since I'm streaming my full screen. But yeah, if you don't mind, just kind of check in with the text chat. If somebody posts there, then if you don't mind, jump in and just ask. But yeah, otherwise I'll kind of jump in periodically and talk through some of the design, if that's okay with everybody. So we have a couple of new headlines in play. One is the NATO player, or the Europe player, trying to have more NATO influence in Ukraine than Russia. And the other one is Russia trying to have more influence in the Baltics than both NATO and the EU. And what's interesting here is by Fred playing this card and Don playing this card, it meant that they had hands full of their opponent's headline cards. And I mentioned this at the beginning. There can be times in the game where you're forced to play one of your opponent's headlines, but by the end of the game, each player will have had access to the same number of headlines.
Really, every time I hit a Russian one, I just put it out there. I'm trying to help Fred out. I am a team player. See, Fred.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, if the player doesn't play insanely, it's true. They could play in a way that actually helps their opponent. But
hey, I got to start my secondary strategy is find something to blame this on. All right, my initiative. If you're ready, Fred, my initiative is 14.
Yeah, I'm ready.
14.
What?
Yeah.
You actually, I put my two biggest cards, and you managed to lose the initiative. So that was slightly unexpected. You should warn me ahead of time so I could plan around the fact that you're doing this. So I have 12 initiatives. So I was really planning on going first, but
I go first.
So I shouldn't flip the card. Yeah.
I will flip my cards. Don't worry. The odds are I will not do anything to screw you up. So what I'm going to do, I have United Kingdom and Ireland. I also have France. Both of these are very powerful cards. So the real question is, do I want to use them to establish EU influence? One of the things you're going to score points for halfway through the game and at the end of the game is for level, influence of 6 in particular regions. And so I've already got a couple of those regions. Fred's got one region. I think I want to start putting some pressure on him because he's got armies and I only have NATO armies. I want to start putting some pressure on him in a NATO sense. So what I'm going to do is start building up some NATO influence, I believe, especially since the current headline has Western Balkans. I have to have a larger influence than him in the Western Balkans and also an army present. So I am going to go ahead and try to start doing that. So for 2 money, I am going to establish some influence from NATO in the Western Balkans. I don't get that card yet because I've got to get to influence level of 5 or 6 before that contested region card comes into my deck. And for the second one, I'm going to use for the the question is, do I want to bump the 1 up or do I want to move an army in? I believe I want to move an army in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this army. I've got a little money right now. So I am actually going to move the army from Spain and Portugal through the Western Mediterranean and Eastern Mediterranean seas. So that's 1, 2, 3 moves to get to the Western Balkans, which is going to cost me 2 coins.
I have so much money, it's annoying.
And then what I'm going to do is with the other card, which gives me a +4. Did I do them both?
You placed influence with one, and then you moved
to
an armor with
Correct.
this
Thank you. I'll make sure I'm trying to give myself an extra move because I'm gonna need 3 to every 2 of Fred's to do well here. So
John, I don't remember. Did you pay when you placed your?
I don't
No,
believe I
but he
did.
paid for the
You
army.
did. Yeah.
But the
I'm
army
gonna
was
move
paid
2
for.
here. Right. That was the question.
And
now,
I'm paying 2.
Before Fred
you're
goes,
still-
I have to draw 2 cards, of which I only have 1. So I'm going to draw that 1 and then reconstitute my deck, which has those contested region cards in it to continue drawing, just like your standard deck builders, right?
Yep.
Sorry, Fred. Go ahead, bud.
So I'm placing 1 influence in the Balkans, and I'm bumping it up to 4.
Hey, Fred's not going down without a fight. So one thing, as you guys kind of recover and we'll advance this to turn 6. So at the end of this current turn, these will resolve. One thing that Don mentioned that's kind of in passing about the halfway point, we're going to score dominance. Every place I have a 6, and then we'll start the second half of the game. The game is broadly divided into 2 periods. We're playing through the what we dubbed the New World Order period, 1992 to 2008. So this is really, you can think of this as Western European expansion, right? So this is a period where NATO and the EU are rapidly expanding into Central and Eastern Europe. And then we have the period of sort of a Russia resurgent new Cold War, which is 2009 to 19. So each of these decks are thematically linked to the period, the actions or the events that were occurring at the time. And so that's what these headline cards are tied to. And you can see that these are all based on actual events that occurred during the time.
And I believe we're on turn 7. Is that correct? Is that?
No, we didn't. We just moved from 5 to 6.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to
Sorry.
play
Thank you.
6.
Sorry to interrupt. Thank you, Dave.
That's okay. Yeah. Yep.
All right. This is where Fred tries desperately to get under my initiative.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm wondering if it's even possible.
So these are the 2 cards that are up for grabs. Russia would have to have 2 armies in Georgia, and then we see the one that they're fighting for. So a NATO army and more NATO influence than Russian influence in the Western Balkans is worth 2 points. Now, if Don has an army here, which means that Fred cannot get his influence to a 6. It can't go to 6 while your opponent has a military presence there. So for Fred to stop Don, either Don doesn't get his influence to 6, or Fred brings in an army and knocks this down.
Just need to check one thing.
But Fred also has this headline. It's going to be hard for him to do both of these things, right?
That's right.
The headline of getting 2 armies in Georgia, and it would take an action to move each of those 2 armies. So if he did that, he would use his 2 actions, assuming he doesn't have an advantage card that gives him something extra. Plus, I also see over here he's only got 3 money, so he's kind of he's at an economic disadvantage. Now, I only have 2 money myself, but it's more important, I think, for the Russian player, unless Dave corrects me, to be able to move their armies and have some agility than it is for the EU NATO player.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Okay, I'm good.
Let's see. So I went really low, and my initiative is 12.
Oh. My initiative is 5.
5. So I get to go first?
Oh, yeah, you can go first. Yeah.
I'm going to play this wonderful. Dave knows what's coming. I'm going to play this wonderful advantage card.
Rage
this
inducing.
advantage card says, if you are going first, Russia cannot spend money this turn. So what I'm hoping to do there is deny Fred. I'm going to put this card up here today. I'm denying Fred the ability to move those armies very far. And in fact, he can't get a second army to Georgia, nor can he necessarily get an army here to destroy this army. So
okay, so hold on. So,
sorry.
Before that, full disclosure, this is where the Sochi area meets Abkhazia. So this is actually adjacent.
Oh, one away. So he could still do it. Okay.
He could sneak them both in.
Okay. So I have a choice then. So my choice is, do I try to deny him Georgia? I think he can react off of whatever I do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the United Kingdom and Ireland card to bump up this 1 to a 5 NATO influence in the Western Balkans. If I use the other card to bump that up to a 6, I am guaranteeing myself these 2 points. If I were to move the army from Turkey into Georgia, I'm guaranteeing that Fred loses these 2 points.
But you're leaving that open.
But I'm leaving this open for Fred.
Tie you. Yep.
So regardless, this is an interesting decision because really it's all about positioning for future rounds. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this second card to bump up this 5 to a 6. And I'm doing that because halfway point, that could score me potentially another point. You know, I'll let Fred position around Georgia. Even though it pains my heart.
It's not really what I hoped for.
And if David just designed this board just slightly differently, if he could have made the world a little different than it actually is, this would have worked out great. There's an alternate universe.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go for my scoring. So I'm gonna spend this card to move that army from Armenia to Georgia. And then you might think I don't have a way to move the second army, and this is where I play the Prime Minister to activate the President. And he's gonna move the army here. And then I've got the news media.
Wow. Wow.
Oh, so he could bump down my 4 now. Very nice. I'll bump down my 6. Because he could bump that 3 times to eliminate the army, right?
Well, he cannot eliminate an army by bumping this up. He just is restricted to not going above 6 or not going above 5.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I'm stuck to 5.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I misinterpreted that. I thought you could bump the influence up to annihilate the army because they're all influence of different types. Is what I was thinking.
Right. If he was to have a 6 here and you move an army in, you lose the army and his influence goes to 5. But in this situation, he's not able to bump up to a 6.
I see.
Yeah, and I use the news media to actually place an influence in Ukraine. I'm gonna try to not move everything at once.
So Fred, the only thing is, you would have to spend money to do that, right?
Yeah, and I have the money here.
But he played his. You can't spend money.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah. That's right. Okay, forgot about that.
I'm glad the designer's here because I forgot about that too, Fred. I was going to let you do it, man.
Yeah, I was about to do
you're
it.
Playing against Dave.
This sanction card is awful.
It is horrible. Yeah, it's brutal.
Well,
look on the bright side. It's out of the game now.
I can take 3+1 actions. That's not super useful right now.
I don't mind if you take that card back. I don't know what the rules are for the, if you win, we can put a big asterisk by it. That's I don't know who keeps the records.
Oh, that's fine. I'm gonna bring Czechoslovakia to a 3, and I'm gonna bring the Western Balkan to a 5 with the news media event. And that means that I need to bring the Western Balkan neutral cards into my discard pile now.
Oh, I also get that card. Thank you. Correct.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing about it is we both have influence in that particular contested region, and so we both have additional cards that are in our decks. Now, but with every positive comes a negative, right? And that the decks are getting fatter, right? So there's some advantage cards. In fact, I discarded one that lets you thin your deck down a bit, which lets you cycle through them more quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. James had asked me about talking through some of the design stuff, and I'll bring this up. There was a point where I'm sure you guys have played A Few Acres of Snow or Hands in the Sea or whatever, and I'm sure there's other games that do this too, where you're fighting over regions, and there's actually only one of those region cards in the game, and it might swap between players. And so during the design, we talked about whether or not, is there one Ukraine card that passes between players based on influence? And ultimately, we resolved to the idea that that's not realistic, right? Both factions can have influence in the same country and do, but the cards are not symmetric, right? So your Western Balkans card is different than Fred's Western Balkans card, depending on which faction has the card. So that was an interesting thing. We during the design process, kind of resolving to that solution.
And can I ask a question? You may have said this already, but the reactions and actions and effects that are on the cards, were there thematic elements from the actual Cold War you pulled in for those particular cards?
Everything about this game is based on, real world inspirations for sure. 100%. Every attribute, every action of the card is based off of, actual GDP or actual military, strength rankings and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty stemmy. That was kind of one of the design goals going in, right? Was to try to make it reflect reality and as much as possible without being rules heavy,
right,
if you will.
Yeah. That's one of the things I really like about it. It's not rules heavy in that regard, right? You play the card and the card literally tells you what you can do with it.
Right.
Are we assessing these at this point?
That's right. Yep. So you both accomplished your goals, so you both get 2. So Don's continuing to milk that 1-point lead.
Right. Hey, that's all it takes at the end. But I have pulled defeat from the jaws of victory many times.
Okay. So we have Belarus, dominance for Russia and Belarus, meaning they have to have a 6. Dominance for the EU and Georgia. Now, this is going to be a tough one for Don to pull off if Fred's sitting with 2 armies in Georgia. That'll be a tough one.
It is a lot of points.
And Fred's already gotten this, right?
Yeah.
Points are hard to come by in this game. A typical game will be often decided in the low to mid, teens. So if a card is worth 2 points, that's a pretty significant bump. Sure. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So the armies, and they are called armies, they don't represent actual kinetic combat. They represent military presence. And you could think of that in terms of, just as NATO is present in these countries, whether it's a partnership for peace or whether the country becomes a NATO member. And so we've seen since 1992 everything from, Ukraine being a place that had Russian soldiers stationed in it to, a NATO aspirant country. And so over time, you'll see that the military presence in a country is part of the influence of the whatever, whether it's NATO or Russia. So military presence, only one side can be present in the country with their military presence, but it doesn't represent conflict. It represents which side has the dominance of military influence at any given point. Yeah, thanks for the question, James. That's a good point. Now, somebody might argue that what happens? What about in a place like Georgia where NATO is present in Georgia and Russia's in occupied, Abkhazia and South Ossetia, or present in Crimea or eastern Ukraine, and the game admittedly doesn't allow for that, but I would just say that it was sort of based on internationally recognized borders, not so much breakaway regions and stuff like that.
All right. So Fred might go ahead.
No, I have 9, but I had a question for David afterwards.
I have an initiative of 8.
Okay, so I will go first. And David, I have a question regarding the Belarus neutral card. It says that if I use it to build an army in Belarus, I can do a +1 action in the Baltics. I will interpret as the +1 as just bumping the influence up, but if I look the example of play in the rulebook, it shows that I can actually put an influence die in the Baltics. I just want to be sure here.
That's right. Anytime that you're given an opportunity to do a +1 action, meaning like an increase action in a place, if influence isn't already there, you can place influence. And to be clear, I'm only talking about like special actions like that, right? Like if a card doesn't have placing influence on it, you can't take that action. But in that case, you absolutely could place a die there, but you'd still have to pay for it like normal.
Yeah, okay, that's the thing that I wanted to be sure, because that's the way I interpreted it, but I'm not saying that, I'm basically asking for a friend. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so I got 3 resources from the energy sector, and then I'm going to use the Northwestern Federal District to build influence in Ukraine, which I was not allowed to do on the previous turn because of EU sanctions, which was not very nice.
But very realistic.
Yes, but still not very nice. Good, and this is out.
Okay. And you're done, right, Fred?
Yeah, and I'm done.
Okay.
And I will draw 2 cards.
So I was getting low on money, so I had to play the Sweden card here, which is a EU-specific influence card, to get some money. So I'm going to get 3 money.
It's very, that's very Swedish.
I think people watching have realized this by now, but this is a good example turn where Don has a Norway, right, who's only a member of NATO, not the EU, so they only have NATO actions, and then Sweden, who's only a member of EU, which only has EU actions. So the longer the game goes, the tougher it is for the Europe player to manage that bifurcation of NATO and EU actions.
And for the Turkey card, I am going to, let's think about this. So I'm going to spend some money to move the army from Turkey, so 1, 2, into the Ukraine, and that'll cost me 1 money. And of course, what I'm trying to do is set up a way to stop, I should say, to achieve this particular headline by making sure, to the extent I can, that Fred can't bump his Russian influence up into Ukraine up to 6, which gives me a chance next turn potentially to establish and bump up influence in the Ukraine to potentially score that headline card. Okay.
Turn 8.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I like this. Okay.
And I have...
Go ahead, Fred.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll let them announce their initiative, and then I'll talk through some of that.
I have 9, Fred.
I have 11, so I will go first, and I'm perfectly fine with that.
That surprises me. I'm interested to see what you do.
And actually, I want to have you do a lot of things. So first of all, I'm going to build an army in Belarus. Because if I build an army in Belarus, I can also spend an extra 2 to influence in the Baltics. Which is fine because none of us have influence in the Baltics, so that gives you another thing to take care of. So I get 1 in the Baltics and an army in Belarus, which might come in handy in the future.
Now hold on before you do that. So
yes, there
Don
is a
immediately has, Don immediately has a chance to react, right? So in this case, because Fred chose to use that +1 influence in the Baltics, now Europe can move an army to the Baltics. Now Europe still has to pay to move it, right? It still has to do the normal costs, but Don could if he wanted to. It's not going to affect this current headline directly.
Sure. So I'll move the army from Denmark, which was a movement of 1-2, which cost me 1 money. Okay. And another thing I don't think we've talked about is whenever that army is built from a card, it's built usually in the region that the card specifies. That is not always the case with some of the Russian cards, though. Correct, Dave?
That's a good point. Yeah, so a couple of the Russian cards allow some more flexibility, but otherwise, yes, that's exactly right. A card typically will instruct you to build it in where the card is at, and it's the only action in the game, really, that's tied to the region that the card is, right? So, whatever that is, like Turkey. Turkey can build an army, but only in Turkey, etc. And every other action, for the most part, is not spatially linked back to the location that's taking the action.
I love that. Makes a lot of thematic sense, though, right? Because you can influence anywhere diplomatically, but building armies has to be done usually in that home country, unless it's a district card from Russia.
Right.
Sorry, I preempted James' question so many times. I'm sorry.
And we don't want to forget, Fred, you've got another action too, right?
Yeah, I have a +3 to do now.
Some of us want to forget.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm gonna put the Balkans, the Ukraine at 4.
So James, I'll tell you, I can't remember the specifics. I have a horrible memory, and the design on this game started, I think, 2014 or 15. So it's been a while. I don't really remember us ever going into too much thought about like the hidden scoring opportunities. It seemed that the tension was always around, the trying to accomplish the headlines and build up to the dominance. And I think there might have been a small bit of, not demonstrating your score, but the score was trackable. And so we kind of resolved to the fact that, like, okay, well, if it's trackable, then we shouldn't hide it, right? Because there will be players who if they want to keep track, they'll just keep track of it, if that makes sense.
All right, let me do a little bit of thinking here, if you don't mind. Oh, man. I need 1 more money. All right, so my choice here is to go all out for the Ukraine or deny him. But he's currently scoring in the Baltics. I could simply establish a die in the Baltics and deny him that point.
And it could be either one of them, NATO or EU.
Right.
We deny it.
But I don't think I can do both, unfortunately. Let's see what my options are here. All right, I don't want to belabor.
Oh, there is maybe.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend 2 coins to establish NATO influence in the Ukraine. And I want to say you get this. Oh, you have to have a minimum of 5 to get control.
It's 5. It's 5. Yeah. So I'm missing 1 influence to get control of the Black Sea.
Let's set up here. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm going to go to Ukraine here and hopefully get this contested card. That way, I will be able to start building some NATO armies in Ukraine and start pressuring the front here on the east. Okay, so what I'm going to do is with that 2 coins that I spent, I'm going to establish. I'm going to use the Norway card to establish NATO influence in the Ukraine. Now, I'm not going to be able to get the Ukraine card. Oh, actually, maybe I am. I'll be trading a point for a point there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to spend the Benelux card to get 3 more influence here to take this one up to a 4. And then I'm going to play the U.S. presidential tour, which says I can take 5 +1 actions, adding no more than 3 influence in any one region. So I'm going to bump this up to a 6 with 2 of those. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to give up that 3rd action because if I had 1 more coin, I could have established NATO influence in the Baltics or EU influence in the Baltics. Oh, NATO with this card to deny him his point, but I can't do that. So that's it for me.
Yeah, it was. You were literally 1 money away from a pretty good turn because
yes, I was.
You could have, you could have gotten both of those. That's interesting.
It's been a 2-point swing, but one money's 1 money. But now both Fred and I are really, really poor.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
We have run the Russian, EU, and NATO, all these economies into the ground.
Oh, okay. So that's it, right? So that's turn 8?
I believe so.
Okay, so we resolve these 2, and you each get your point. These come forward. Now, this is a different turn than what we were used to. This is turn 8, so we shift them. You each are going to place a headline, but then you're not going to just draw one up. Instead, you're going to place one, you're going to discard 2, and you're going to draw 3 from the second deck. And so for people watching, what that means is they've been able to hold on to events that they never wanted to put in play. Obviously, you would hold off putting in play the events that would advantage your opponent. And now they're going to draw from the second deck.
And now we're discarding the remaining 2, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
You just want them up at the top of the board or something?
Yeah.
You just
just put them in here. Doesn't matter.
Well, Fred, I had a lot of your events in my deck, my man.
And I did too because I actually placed 1 of yours in the last one and then discarded 2 of yours in the discard. So that was.
I did the same.
Was not
no. I did the same thing. Dave, did you? I watched Dave shuffle this deck, but I'm not so sure at this point. And now we draw 3 from the.
That's right. Yeah.
Era 2.
Yeah. All right. So we've gone to turn 9. Next turn, turn 10, when we finish it, we'll be scoring dominance also. And right now, Don's doing a pretty good job of having dominance. Now, if Don, so dominance is any place you have 6 influence. If Don was to have both NATO and EU influence in the same country, he would still only score 1 point.
And one thing to be mentioned, Fred is protecting his 6 influence here with the army he has in Belarus. So one strategy would be to knock that thing down and deny him that point, but it would require me to walk 2 armies in, one to annihilate itself against this army, and the other one to knock that 6 down to a 5. And in order to do that effectively, I would probably want to go second in that particular round, and that's why the initiative is so important in those even rounds. This is a rough one. Because he's blocked off Georgia and he's got Belarus pretty much locked in, so he's going to make up his 1 point.
Yeah, let's see if Fred can hold on to both of those. Can he hold on to Belarus and stop Don? This Georgia is it's just crazy. That's probably not worth the effort, right? But you'd have to get dominance there too. But Belarus is still attainable. You could still stop him and just be a big investment.
But as you said, one of the things I'm thinking of here is that, I mean, just thinking out loud, one of the things I'm thinking of is when it comes to 6-point dominance, I've got 4 versus his 1, he could
Yeah.
bump up easily. Oh, he can't bump up easily in Ukraine because I've got that blocked off. Same thing is true for the Western Balkans unless he puts a lot of energy. And again, we said he doesn't have a lot of money. So the only way he could do that would be march a lot of armies in. So I think he's going to have to spend a couple turns getting up his economy going. And what I'm going to try to do in the meantime is just put pressure on him with more influence. So he might score this 2 points for Georgia, but hopefully it'll come at the expense of 2 points somewhere else. I'm sorry, in Belarus, rather. Because Georgia seems pretty far out of reach right now.
Yeah.
I have a 13 as an initiative, Fred.
I have 10.
Okay, so I will go first. And I am really poor, so I'm going to use my Germany card here, which is a good one, right? It's 7 initiative, but it also has the advantage of getting me 4 money. And that's huge right now because I need it desperately. So I'm going to take this stack of 5 and put 1 back. And then the other card I have is Italy. And with Italy, what I will do is I will spend 2 coins to establish EU influence. If you don't mind, I'm going to look at my cards for a second. Just telegraph what's going on.
Don is absolutely not preparing for a future play.
That's right. Let's see where I put this. I'm just going to randomly drop it on the board. Give me a second to see where I'm going to randomly drop it. I'm going to randomly drop it here. And in fact, one of the things I overlooked is that I now have 6 influence over the Black Sea
That's
with
right.
NATO. So I actually have NATO control of the Black Sea, which means this card I also have. I'm going to put it here beside my voluminous cash. And that says that I can build an army, a NATO army in Turkey with any action card that has a NATO action. If I use a contested region card to build an army, I must have at least 5 influence in the contested region. Now that's good. So that gives me some flexibility because a lot of my NATO armies are way over here in Western Europe, and I want to be able to do things much closer. I also don't think I got the Ukraine card in my deck. Maybe I'm wrong. No. So there's the Ukraine card. I believe. That's it. Was that both of my actions? I believe it was.
Yep.
I got money and then I
Yep.
established influence.
Yep. So I'm going to get 2 resources with my first action, and with my second action, I'm going to move 1 army to Ukraine, and those 2 armies are going to cancel each other.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. So we go to turn 10. So before we started, I was talking to James a little bit about the fact that when this game came out in 2019, and at the time we talked about what some possible future event cards, if we wanted the game to have those, would look like on the same model that these cards are designed around. And some of the things we talked about at the time were a renewal of conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh between Azerbaijan and Armenia, which has come to pass. And then there's a lot of stuff based around resumption of conflict in Ukraine, which obviously we're seeing in the news now, possible resumption of that. So the game, one thing that I'm proud of is it's a relatively elegant design, I think, or minimalist design, but it allows for modeling some of those types of things.
Are you ready, Don?
I believe I am, and my initiative is 5.
My initiative is 4.
Ah, well done. Well done. Where's that flip the table button? All right. Well done. Okay. So I'm going to go super easy here, I think. And let's see. I'm not getting Georgia. He's going to get Belarus, so I'm giving up those 2 points. So what I will do is I will simply use both these cards for their influence increase value, and that's a total of 5 to bump up the Eastern Balkans to a grand total of 6, which will put some pressure on him to deny me that point. And that will also give me the Eastern Balkans card in my deck.
Good. Then I'm going to use the Western Balkans card to move one army from Georgia to Ukraine. So moving to the Black Sea and bumping this one down to 5, removing that army. And that cost me 1 resource because it was 2 moves. And then I'm going to use the news media to make a 3+1 action, bringing Ukraine to 6. And then I'm going to bring the... So if only I had 1 coin.
Let's go back in time. Well, give me the money I need, and I give you the money you need.
Yeah, we could do, yes. And I'm going to bring the Baltics too. It might come in handy in the future. So, yeah.
So a couple of things just happened this turn. The Black Sea changed hands twice there, right? It went from NATO. What's the tie break on the Black Sea? I forgot.
Very good. Yeah,
Russia.
is Russia. So Russia now has control.
So Russia actually gets the Black Sea. Yeah.
Yeah, it went from NATO to EU back to Russia in a single turn.
Yeah.
And one interesting thing is the EU and NATO influence do not pool together for the Black Sea influence, of course, right?
Yeah.
And I do like the fact there's just an automatic tiebreaker on the card. It just tells you if there's a tie in a case like this, right? It gives you the clear tiebreaker amongst the 3 factions, 2 of which are controlled by the European player, of course.
Okay. So that's it for turn 10. So Georgia does not get resolved, but Belarus does for 2 points.
Oh, no. It's terrible.
I'm ahead.
It's only temporary.
For a second, I'm ahead. It's gonna stop, but now I'm ahead. Oh, God.
All right. So we'll place the new headlines.
Oh man, it's lucky that I put that influence in Eastern Balkans. That'll work out. It turns out.
So Don, the next headline I'm just placing is I'm really placing it for you, and I think you would love it.
Okay.
Belarus, look at that.
Here they are again. Belarus scoring over and over. That's perfect.
The gift that keeps on giving.
That's rough. I'm okay with that. Let's see what happens here with this this halfway point scoring.
Give you there's your new card, Fred. Okay, so we score dominance, right? So we just count each place where a player has a 6. So I think Fred has 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
And Don, you has
4.
4.
So he's just bringing 1.
2, 3, 4.
So there was a very short period of time of less than a turn where Fred got ahead.
But we only checked the score 1 time, it turns out. I'm really worried about that 1 time we're going to check it. Now, let me ask you a question. Go ahead, sorry. Oh, we get new advantage cards, right?
So we get the 3 new advantage cards,
Yeah,
so
good call.
There are 4 cards here, one of which you won't even see, right? Because you're only drawing 3. Discarding one of those, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
The one that was left is out of the game as well.
Yeah, one thing I did mean to mention for people watching is that at the beginning of the game, we did a little bit of setup with the headline cards. Each player, we start with 1 for each player, and each player gets a hand of 3. But then we wind up shuffling and discarding quite a few. So in any given game, you're only ever going to see maybe about 2/3 of the headlines, and only about half of them would ever even be in play. So.
All right, so these are the 2 advantage cards I will not use. Can I ask you another question? So in the second half of the game, the points for the headlines seem to go up a bit. Was that a conscious design decision too, Dave?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, just to kind of bump them just a little bit, right? And this game does not have any. There's no rubber banding, right? There's no catch-up mechanism. But we did want to at least allow opportunity to have slightly larger scoring opportunities towards the end, in case somebody got behind by a few points. There's an opportunity to catch back up.
And just one thing, Don, I heard you saying that you were removing 2 advantage cards from your hand.
No, I drew 3. I drew 3, discarded 1. But there was one card that I didn't even see, right? And so that was one. The 2 that go out of the game are the one I discarded and the one that I never saw.
Okay, fair enough. Because I thought you were discarding 2, and I would be okay with that, but it's just.
As Dave said, there's no catch-up mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the obvious one right now would be a sort of modern version of it, with the tensions between the U.S. and its allies in China. Right now, I would say that the sides, quote unquote, if you will, in that game are a little less uncertain in many ways. Right, it's not as clear cut as it would be in some other settings, which maybe allows for more interesting dynamic, potentially even more players in 2. And then the other one that I would be interested in exploring potentially would be like an interwar period, so between World War I and World War II, the diplomatic, sort of relations that occurred and that sort of thing between that time period. Those would be the first 2 choices. Though I think, Fred, you had an idea at some point, did you not, about potentially, something similar to this or whatever with a I can't remember what we discussed.
Yeah. I actually wanted to. I was thinking about using the same system for between the 2 world wars in Europe. So there was 2 ideas: is potentially using the system to represent the diplomatic efforts of 2 sides during the Spanish Civil War to get some support from European, but also the U.S. country for fighting the war, while the military aspect would only be in Spain and the diplomatic aspect would be in the rest of the world. So that's the first idea that I had. And then I was also thinking that it could be interesting to represent the escalation of tension in Europe, but between the 2 world wars, just before maybe the 30s up to 39, but maybe making it a 4-faction game with the same kind of mechanic, with 2 sides, you could say, that are semi-cooperative, but have their own agenda too. So I think there is a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, the Spanish Civil War would be awesome, but it's also, I feel like you need like a doctorate degree to understand the all the goings on during the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah, and it wouldn't really focus on the internal aspect of the Civil War, so not the kinetic aspect or just the internal fighting. I think the military aspect would be abstracted, and it would mostly focus on something that is maybe a bit more approachable and hasn't been that much explored, which is the diplomatic struggle outside. So getting some support from the UK, from France, from Germany, from Italy, potentially from the US, for both sides. But also having to manage the fact that they don't get over-influenced by their partners. So you would have that tension, like making sure, for example, that the Republicans don't get overwhelmed by USSR influence, while on the other side, maybe Franco doesn't want to be forced into World War II, so having too much influence from Germany. So having this balancing act of getting material support, but not creating too much of a dependency. But yeah, we'll see. I have other stuff to finish first, but it's definitely on the back of my mind.
Yeah. You put it on the stack. Put it on the list.
It's on the list. It's on the list. It's on the very long list. Yeah.
And we discussed that long enough that Don actually made his choice and then changed it.
I did.
Yes, actually,
There's no right
so
answer
right now,
from my hand, it turns out.
Yeah. Don is already on turn 15, so that's the thing. So yes. Okay, I have placed my cards. Sorry, Don, for that tangent. And my influence is at 11.
Mine is at 12.
What?
Yeah. So let's see what I'm going to do with it. I had a plan, and that plan is I'm going to spend 2 of my 3 to establish EU influence in Hungary, I believe. Let's take a look up here. Let's put it in Georgia. Let's get crazy.
Oh wow!
Oh, that's bold.
Make it a. Probably been fairly obvious throughout the course of the game to people watching, but when you get cards for contested areas like Georgia, it's not exactly the kind of card you want to put in your deck.
This is true.
So, we took a look at this, and it's got just these weak actions. It can't place influence. It can't build an army. So, this is the tension that you have in the game where, you need to score points, but with every play
for Russia, they do have a slight advantage of being very low initiative. If you only have one key action that you want to do last, there are good cards to place in your batch. So you can go down to 5, which is almost giving you in a range of getting second. So that can be useful, but it's at a cost. Good, but now it's money time for me. So I'm gonna get 3 resources from the energy sector. So pumping out some of those fossil fuels that I love so much. And now that I have this, I have enough money to place influence. Wait a minute. I have an idea now. Oh, I have a better idea than that. Good. I just had an instance of. Actually, I'm gonna do that first before playing my second card. I'm gonna play the diplomatic relations, and I'm gonna put a dice for free in Moldova, and it's gonna be bumped up to 3. So that's nice.
I'm gonna play for this. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and then I'm playing the president to make a +3 to it, and get at 6.
Nice.
Nice play.
Which gets you the Moldova card as well.
That's true. Yeah. But we can advance this to 12. But one thing I do want to talk about real quick, because this is the first time we've seen it, is a headline. This is the BTC pipeline, and so when you have a headline that's about an economically relevant thing, whether it's the BTC pipeline or the Nabucco pipeline or whatever, you'll see that in addition to the winner getting the victory points, we put a little token in Azerbaijan and Georgia, right? So we would put a little money token in those, and it applies to either player. If either player takes a take money action with either of those countries from then on, they get an extra money when they do it. Yeah, it's been a really, really tight game. you would think that we had like scripted all of this because I think this has done a good job of demonstrating a lot of the back and forth. So kudos to Don and Fred. I mean, this is going to go. We probably won't have time to finish it. I don't think we will, but it'll go down to the wire in this game. So
regardless
this
of
really
who
good.
wins, I think.
Yeah. This has been really good.
I will say this, Fred. I've played this 4 times. I think this is the 5th time of playing, and I should compliment you. I haven't seen a Russian player, including myself, do as well as you're doing. So, I think, yeah, I think that's because I think the Russian side has some advantages, but it's slightly harder to play, and I think we chose the right player on that side. Just let you know.
So for about this game and maybe talking about the balance, and I usually originally plan to practice ahead of time, but that's only my 3rd play of the game, so I'm still struggling a bit with it. But just from the 2 previous plays, the feeling that I got, and maybe David, you'll have an opinion on this, is that the impression that I got, even if I couldn't fully wrap my head around how each of the factions worked exactly, was that maybe Russia was harder for a new player, but once you get to know the game, it balances out, and maybe if you know how to play Russia well, you can get the style advantage. But you have to play with Russia's advantage, which I don't fully grasp yet. But I feel like maybe if you know how to play Russia well, but it might have a steeper learning curve. That's the impression that I got. But based on 3 games. So.
I would say that Russia is easier to play and it's harder to play well.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Good comment. Yeah. Because you don't have to balance the EU versus NATO.
That's right.
And it's clear that you want to sort of impose force via your army's influence, but it's hard to do that and maintain your economy, right? And so knowing when to use the cards for money and when to use them for army movement seems to be a harder balancing act for the Russian player than balancing between EU and NATO. But I think both sides having played it a few times now, are very even when it comes to balance. I do think Russia maybe, as you said, is a steeper learning curve, though.
Yeah.
I have my cards if you have your cards.
Yeah, I have my cards.
I'm at a grand total of 6.
I have 5.
Okay, I will go first then. This is not what I wanted. So I will play Poland for the EU action. I'm doing that for an important reason, because I control the Baltic Sea, and if I use Poland or the Baltics for an EU action, I get an additional $2 or 2 money out of it. And so instead of getting 3 money for the Poland card, I'm going to get 5 money for the Poland card. And I've been my economy has not been what I wanted it to be. So, and then the other card I have is Finland. And what I'll do with Finland, and I will spend 2 to establish EU influence in Azerbaijan. I'm not quite done yet, though.
Oh, what's he got up his sleeve?
Oh, I don't know. This is rough. If I was going second, this would be a no-brainer. If you don't mind, I will. Instead of using that money, if you don't mind, for the Finland card, I'd like to go back, if that's okay, and get money with that card instead. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You okay with that, Fred? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, instead of establishing that 1, you'll see why in just a second. So that would save me the $2 I spent to establish that, and further, it would get me $2 from the Finland card. And now I will. I'll take a 1-2 punch and see if it works. So I will play this Advantage Europe card. Pay up to 3 coins. For each coin spent, increase EU influence in contested region to 2, even if there is none. So I'm going to start spamming out EU influence on the board as the plan. I'm going to spend 3, and that is going to. That's why I can get a 2 in Azerbaijan. Further, I'll put a 2 in Hungary. And I will also put a 2 in
That was an awesome play because Fred could have easily spent one action to tie you in Azerbaijan, but now it's tough.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it in Moldova, I think, to try to put a little pressure there. I'm also going to play so that was the one advantage card. I'm burning 2 advantage cards to do this. But it seems like a pretty good move.
And that cost you 6, right?
That cost me 3. Pay up to 3 for each 1 spent, increasing EU influence in the case region to 2. So 3 regions get a 2 EU influence from nothing, and it cost me 3 total. Is that correct, Dave?
Oh, pay up to 3.
That's
Okay,
right.
yeah. I didn't. Yeah. Now I understand.
The second card is Eastern Partnership. You may +2 in Armenia, Azerbaijan, which bumps this to 4. Belarus. So in hindsight, I'd probably place that in Belarus just because I can bump it now. Oh no, I can bump the Moldova. Yep. So that's Armenia, which I just did. Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan I just did.
You did Azerbaijan.
I did Azerbaijan, not Armenia though. Belarus, which I don't have influence in. I could spend 2 though to establish in there. Is that correct, Dave?
This is adding 2. Yes, you could spend 2 money to place 1 in there.
Okay, I will do that.
Yep.
I think that's a poor move, but I'm trying to put as much pressure as I can. Yep. Georgia. Now I can't bump that up because the army is precluding that.
That's right.
Moldova, which takes the 2 up to 4. And then the Ukraine, which I don't have 1 in. I could spend 2 to put 1 in Ukraine, but I'm not going to do that because I'm so poor at this point.
Yeah, that's right.
And those are my 2.
Did you remember to place the Georgia card in your discard?
I did not. Thank you.
I'm saying that because you might want to have it because as you're going to score that objective, you're going to have +1 resource if you play it in the future. So just
Well, I believe I did actually.
You did because you got a 5 in this last turn.
I did. Yeah. It's not in my contested deck over here. So
yeah.
Okay. And I don't think I have the Baltic Sea, the Black Sea anymore.
EU probably has that because Eastern Balkans. This is a total of 11.
I think EU has it.
Yeah. Now one may think that Moldova influences that, but as you can see on the board, there's Moldova actually.
It's not adjacent to the yeah.
Okay, so that is now under EU control. Here in France, I take as a moral victory. That's good. It means I'm making you think. That's good.
Yeah, I didn't expect you to spend your 2 advantage card and being so brutal. But yeah, that's what I have to. And you had so much money. That's insane.
It seems like from the EU point of view, just putting a ton of influence pressure on you seems to be effective. And if near the end of the game, if I can take these NATO armies, a combo, moving those NATO armies to knock down your influence and then bumping my influence, right? Those are huge swings in points.
Yeah.
Only talk about this because we're not going to be able to get to the end of the game. So it's like that was my plan.
I'm going to move from Georgia to if I move from Georgia.
Now it is worth noting that, again, for mostly talking for people watching, if Fred wanted to, he could deny Don this card, right? You could place influence in Azerbaijan and bump it to 6. I mean, bump it to 4. In which case, Don would not accomplish this objective. So it really comes down to whether you want to accomplish your own thing.
He would also not score the Moldova points as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it would be a benefit of +1 for me to prevent you from scoring this. Because now you're just going to get 1 point ahead. But I'm trying to consider, is it better for me to have an army placed in Moldova that could be useful in the future and lose that point? Or prevent you from having Azerbaijan? That's my the big decision I have to make. Oh, but I remember something about the Moldova card. Okay, so the Moldova card, I think, lets me bring any army into Moldova when I have it, and it's about to come anyway, because I only have 3 cards left in my deck, so maybe I don't have to care that much about that. And it's probably better for me to prevent you from having... Oh, no, but I cannot do that, David.
Why is that?
Because...
you can't place... I'm sorry, yes. You can't place influence. Yeah. So never mind. That's not even an option. Yep.
Okay, so it's not even an option.
Oh,
so
I
thank
see.
you. Thank you, David. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Sorry. I'm here for you, buddy.
God.
I went through all these permutations in my mind before I played.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much for that. False hopes. No, but then I'm going with my original plan of moving an army into Moldova. 1, 2, 3. That's gonna cost me 2. And maybe I don't need this army in Georgia anymore. So it's gonna be... Oops, sorry, I'm moving your dice. That is...
You can put them wherever you want them, Fred.
Yeah, it's partially intended, but that's more of a... It's a Freudian slip. 1, 2, 3, and I'm gonna place it in Moldova. So that's gonna cost me 2 resources.
I'm just going to move it down just a bit so we can see the dice, if you're okay with that.
Yeah,
This is
sure.
in Moldova. Yeah.
That's my army move, and then I have 2, and I could either place influence or buff something to +3. And I'm thinking, should I be playing influence?
Now, one additional advantage while Fred's thinking of this current headline is that, and this could benefit both of us, right? With the +1 increase in economy in Azerbaijan and Georgia.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I will have those cards and he will not.
Right.
Potentially,
I've
got Georgia. Yeah. If I get those cards are worth more money to me if I score that card.
Yeah, one thing that Fred did by vacating Georgia is he is allowing you to go up to 6 here.
6,
where
right.
Otherwise you wouldn't be able to.
Which will also help me solidify control of the Black Sea. Yeah.
And I'm done.
Okay. Now we assess these headlines. He's going to score the Moldova, I believe. I'm going to score the Azerbaijan Georgia card, correct?
That's right.
I put you to 12, and I go to 10.
In addition, don't we put a coin in Azerbaijan and a coin in Georgia?
Yeah,
that's right.
To remind you that you're going to get extra cash.
There we go. And now we are on turn 13.
And I'm also placing that headline just for you.
Oh, sorry. I'm way behind you. I apologize. Let me see some headlines here. This is a tough one.
Yeah, just maybe for people watching to understand the dynamic. So in each of the periods, the EU has a increasing advantage in terms of prestige point that comes from the objective cards. So I think it's +5 on period 1 and +7, something like this, on period 2, if you take into account the amount of prestige that can come from objective headline cards. David?
That's right, yeah. The easiest way to think about it is there's more opportunity, there's more points available to the Europe player, but they're obviously harder to get, right?
Oh, yeah. I've definitely seen that. I came out swinging here. I threw down the gauntlet. It's going to be all about Moldova.
Yeah.
It's going to be all about Moldova. Yes.
All about Moldova. Look at that.
Oh, I don't know if I like that. She's got a lot more armies than I do. My armies are a long way away. They're mailing in mail saying, "Hey, hope it goes well."
The fate of Europe hinges on Moldova.
Exactly, as it should be. Oh man, this has become very difficult. Oh man.
And maybe knowing that we won't be able to finish, do you want, David, maybe that we stop maybe 5-10 minutes early so you can answer a question and we can debrief
Sure.
or something like this? Because
Yeah,
I think you have a session just after, right?
What's that?
You have a session just after this one, right?
Yeah, I do. That's right. So yeah, let's plan to go and maybe another round or two. We can end around 10 till.
Yeah, sure. Let's go maybe for the next headline, see if it's okay with you, Don.
Yeah, that's good. Yep.
Of course.
Two more rounds.
Okay. I'm ready whenever you are ready.
Yeah. Just thinking that.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this game, by the way.
Money is tight. Money is tight.
I looked over and I saw that money was tight for you. I might have factored that into my decision.
Oh, Fred, you got to stop him in Hungary, bud.
Oh, come on, man.
The big one. If Fred stops you in Hungary,
what's going on here?
if he stops you in Hungary and he scores Belarus, we'll end with a tie. So
there you go, Fred. There's your challenge, buddy.
Oh, that's true. Fred does have an advantage card.
Yeah, I noticed that I burnt 2. It got me 3, so it was a +1, and I thought it set me up pretty strong down here also.
Yeah.
Because he's either going to have to try to march here to deny me points, or he's going to have to try to march down here to deny me points.
Yeah.
At this point, at least, either one of those is going to be expensive.
Right. That's right.
But given the way the Moldova situation is playing out now, I do think it's interesting with the forthcoming headlines. If I were my pressure on Moldova is worth 2 points, his pressure is worth 1 point.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking a big swing there. But even if I lose that battle, he will net a point on me. 3 if you don't count the 2 points of opportunity cost, right?
Right.
I'm putting the black sea card in front of
Belarus
him.
He's got so.
Yep. Okay. I think I'm done.
Okay. I am at 10.
And I think I'm higher than this. I'm at 12.
Okay. And we're on turn 13, is that correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna get 2 resources because I need to have at least some amount of flexibility when it comes to taking an action with my armies. So that's it. And then I'm going to bump Eastern Balkans to 4.
Nice. So I figure his plan here is to move his army in out of Moldova, potentially to knock this down, and then bump up his Eastern Balkans.
But I think I need to keep my army in Moldova. So, I need to keep my army in Belarus. I didn't actually plan for that. Yeah, because on the previous headline, I needed to keep the army in Moldova to score it.
Okay, is that it for you?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see what I chose down here. I got Spain and Portugal and Turkey. So what I'm going to do with Spain and Portugal is I'm going to bump my EU influence in Hungary up to 5. And then with the Turkey card, I'm going to move a NATO army. And I'm going to move an army, let's see, from the Baltics. Let's think about this. It's a tough one. Actually, I'm going to move from the Eastern Balkans. I'm going to move from Italy 1, 2 into here, and that will cost me 1 money.
Oh boy. All right.
Last one.
I didn't expect you to do that.
Well, I got to try to protect the EU down here. That's the plan, at least. And what I'm thinking is you would have to move 2 armies in, one to annihilate that army, one to knock that down. You'd have to find a way to play a third to bump up Russian influence.
Yeah, it's not possible. And you know that I don't have cards that bring me up to 5 in one go for Hungary. So basically this is done. Oh god. That's bad. Super bad. Just to be clear, Don, I think at the end of the game I would still have 1. But I think that when we're going to stop the game, I would be slightly behind.
Hey, you know what? I'll take what I could get, because I also think, I respect you enough, Fred. I also think we went into the game you would win. I think I've been outplayed, but I think I've gotten lucky.
Oh, I wish that was true, Don. I wish that was true. Oh god, it's not looking good.
The one thing I do think is I've done effectively here is, especially with those advantage cards I got, is I've really bumped up influence across all the contested regions. So I can get a ton of points potentially off of the influence that I have from the EU and force you to throw your armies against that influence.
Now, the one thing I've seen at this point in the game, right? Because we've got
about a quarter left, right?
5, 6. Yeah, we've got about 6 turns. Now, the thing that the players won't see by us ending this game when we're going to end it is Don's deck is kind of a train wreck in terms of a ton of EU cards. And I've seen turns where the Europe player has nothing but EU cards, meaning now the Russian player doesn't know this, but the Europe player can't move an army if they had to, right? And that could wreck them at the end of the game.
But one advantage card that I discarded because it wasn't good, but situationally it's very good, is you can swap out, I believe, 2 cards from your hand from 2 cards of your choice from your draw deck or discard pile, which is huge in-game card because it can give you the flexibility you need to get a ton of money off of, say, a Poland card if you control the Baltic Sea like I do. Another thing I think is effective is getting control of these seas. I think is very important for the Russian player, especially the Black Sea. The Baltic Sea is very good in that it can generate, well, both of them can generate a ton of money for the EU player. So I think controlling these and prioritizing that is a pretty good move for both sides. So I think there's some natural tension built up over those seas.
So I have my initiative number.
I have mine as well. So mine is a grand total of, are you ready for this? 4.
Yeah. I have 12, so I plan for you to go low.
So you're just above me. Go ahead.
Yeah, a small amount. No, but I'm not planning on doing anything for that turn. So what I'm actually doing is, which is weird because we're going to stop, but I'm still planning for the future because I think I still have a good shot at winning this. So I'm getting 3 resources from the president. And then what I'm doing is bumping the Baltics up to 4 because most of my cards are +2. So 4 is a good number, meaning that by moving 1 army and having a +2, I could get at 6 in the Baltics just before the dominance in turn 20.
That's good. Okay, you ready? So my 2 cards, this is where those like this Eastern Balkans card is not a very powerful card in the grand scheme of things, right? Austria is not a very powerful card either. So what I'm going to do here is with the Austria card is I'm going to use the +3 influence to bump up Hungary, go ahead and get that to a 6. And then with the other one, in order to deny you the points from the current Belarus, is I'm going to actually spend this for the NATO action to move an army. And I'm going to move the army from the Baltics into Belarus, which is free, which annihilates both armies.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
The Eastern Balkan card, you control it because you have EU influence.
Thank you very much.
NATO
thank
influence.
you very much.
Yeah. Wait a minute, Don. Are you cheating right now? Are you cheating right now?
I told you. I told you I was going to mess this up, and it took me to the end of the game to do it. Dang it! Oh,
No,
very
but
well, very nice.
that's
Very good.
huge, and I want to
It
talk
is
about this
huge.
for just a second. You know,
Sure.
we've mentioned this in passing a couple of times. We talked about the tension between NATO and EU. Oftentimes, players will play this for the first time, and they'll say, "Oh, Europe is too powerful." Da da da. And when you start peeling back the onion a little bit,
Right.
This mistake happens all the time.
Right.
So that's really cool that once again, I feel like you guys have engineered this. You scripted it perfectly because, yeah. So that's when this card, you know, it's in your hand and you start cursing it because not only can you not do the NATO thing, but you don't want this card at all.
That's right. All right.
Yeah.
So what I did is I went back and I just bumped up the Azerbaijan to 6 to put more pressure on you down there.
But that means you take the Azerbaijan card, right? Which is good
I
that you
did
get
take
6
the
points.
Azerbaijan card, and also, let's see here. Yes. So I would take the Azerbaijan card, which again, at this point in the game, as Dave said, my deck is kind of a mess. But you know, I'm kind of running on fumes a bit, and I'm just hoping that, you know, I have 11 cards to draw, so I'm not going to get to these other cards I'm taking. So I might as well take those cards and put them on my discard pile.
Yeah.
Oh, damn it.
So that would be it. So these would resolve. So
that would be 15 for Don and 12 for me.
right.
And we can
And
refer to
Don's
that
team-
as the lead that would not have withstood the test of time. There's no question, Fred.
I would be challenging that because I've in my previous game where I was playing Russia, yes, in the Cardboard Emperor Club that James is organizing in the UK in London. I was playing, and I was even further behind. And that's the thing that I like about the game is that you can plan for the end game, and in the last 5 to 6 turns, you can actually manage coming back. Like it is as long as you keep a cold head and you know what you're going for, it is still manageable, which I think is interesting in the game. Without having any rubber band mechanic, you haven't lost until you have actually lost. I think there is still an option, which is quite interesting.
And I found that over time, playing those headline cards in your hand before they ever get to forthcoming or current headline cards can be extremely important, right? Positioning yourself in a way where the opponent is not seeing necessarily the sequence of events you're setting up behind the scenes, but then when it hits forthcoming, you have to give yourself a bit of a cushion over 4 turns to maintain that position you had set up already. So I found that the people that seem to be successful with the game are the ones that play that deck all the way through as they get those headlines into their hand, build toward that. So, yeah. And Fred, you were doing a great job of that. I was getting lucky in pulling cards. You were doing really good with, less fortunate pulls than I was. So, and I look at this as a tie game because this 2 and that 1, I'm not scoring it. You're scoring that 1. That's 3 points. So that puts us tied. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I think I would only have scored 1, so I would have caught up. The only thing that I was worried about at the end of the game was the fact that you were so far ahead in terms of dominance, which I expect to be either having I wanted to have a slight advantage on, or at least being on par with you, which wasn't the case. So I was actually a bit sweating around that point, and I was mostly planning around a specific headline card that I had. And I wanted to have a slow build-up here because I had this headline card in my hand, which was Baltics and Poland. And I was pretty sure I could tell the Baltics. And then I was thinking, well, I have this army in Belarus. Once it's done, it can actually be used. And I think I had more or less an action plan for getting this one, hoping that it would, with the +1 of Moldova, this could potentially put me ahead. But it was a bit of a stretch. I was not sure I could pull it off, but yeah, that was the overall plan for me.
Well, Fred, I thought you played very well, man, and I felt fortunate just to be sort of maintaining pace with you, to be honest. So,
but it was awesome. It was really great. It was really fun playing with you. I think we need to have I would concede that one, and I would be happy to have a revenge match.
Okay. Sure, of course, I would do that. Dave, any commentary from the designer on how this was played and things that maybe we did or didn't hit that you thought we should have?
No, I think you guys hit hit all the high notes. I think that was awesome. I think it was a really good representation of the game. So that was awesome. Thanks again for doing this. This was really cool. James, did you have any final questions, or do we have any questions in the text channel?
I would just say one thing, maybe to conclude, is I think this game really rewards repeated play. Like each time I played it, it was more fun. So I don't know how much the fun curve is going up, but I think it's if you have that game at home, or if you're planning on buying it, I think it's worth it to play it. I would say multiple times, because it's, even though the game is quite simple, the more you play it, the more you feel that you're getting into the depth of how fun the mechanics are. But you really need to go through that. It's not obvious in the first couple of plays. Definitely not.
I would also add, if you don't mind, that I went heavy EU, and I wanted to bring NATO armies in just enough to sort of protect the EU influence in particular places. I think you could also go NATO heavy, which I've played with that a little bit in a couple of the games I've played, and when that happens, it becomes almost a different flavored game. It's about setting up armies in particular places to block other armies, right? So you're not necessarily directly protecting your influence, but I'm cutting off the paths by which your armies get to my influence, or or you cut off the way my armies get to your influence. And where that sort of wall is set up can be very interesting in the game, right? Especially when you factor in the fact that the armies can move through the seas around and stuff. So the economy comes into play even more. I think it's a different game depending on the way the EU NATO player builds out their strategy, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I agree with Don. It's really interesting, the fact that it can take a different flavor depending on each player's strategy. It's really good.
Yeah, and of course I talked about this a little bit. The game is very driven by the headline cards, obviously, and so every game will feel pretty different based on which headline cards come out and the sequence they come out and whatnot. So that'll drive a lot of it too.
And I will say there's a certain satisfaction. It's an evil satisfaction, but when you look in your hand and you only see, as Fred did and I did during the game, you only see the headline cards from the other player. It's like, man, I really don't want to put this out there. And so it really becomes about damage mitigation at that point. It's like, what can I put out here that's just risky enough that other player will not necessarily go after it?
And that's a funny thing. Like that. In the situation where you're forced to put your opponents out, the decision then becomes, well, I can put this one that's only worth a point, but that means it's probably relatively easy for them to get it. Or I could put this one that's worth 3 points. They probably can't get it because it's so hard. But man, talking yourself into putting a 3-point card for your opponent out there that's tough.
And there's a little bit of bluffing when it comes to the fact I threw that Moldova card out there, but Fred was also going for Moldova. And so what I've done is I've sort of doubled down on that Moldova influence at this point. And that makes it more lucrative for him and harder for me to protect, right? So that changes the dynamic of the game. And those two cards coming out at the same time would not happen in the vast majority of games.
That's true. Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's right. Yep.
Anyway,
it was awesome playing with you, Don. I had a lot of fun. That was really great. Good.
You as well. I say this though, I like you. Thank you for playing this game. I'm afraid to ever look across another war game at you because I'm afraid I would not fare nearly as well if we did it again.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again. I'm going to head off to the next event. All right, this was super fun.
And thanks everybody watching. See you, Fred.
Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.